Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to Be with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Ireland, eggs, wrestling, and the world's largest Irish coffee. Today's guest is the amazing Tim Herlihy of Tullamore D.E.W, U.S. brand ambassador. No better time to talk about Irish whiskey. Tullamore D.E.W with the recent release of the rum cask finished Tullamore D.E.W. South by Southwest 2018 is upon us, and just this Sunday is St. Paddy's Day. Tim was recently in town with the wonderful Jack, also of Tullamore D.E.W. Sat down and talked about life, eggs, eating, drinking, wrestling, and so much more. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this great chat with Tim Herlihy of Tullamore D.E.W.
I love eggs, but I went through it. That's the first time I've ever been compared to a porn star. But eggs is a big part of my life.
Yeah.
Like, I like eggs. I know how to do lots of different styles of eggs.
Yeah.
But I did go through a wee rebellious phase when I was a kid. Like, you know the way you discover that your parents aren't cool at all?
Right.
So what's the best way of rebelling against your parents? It was eggs for me. And I went through probably a 6-year phase of like, I don't like eggs, meaning I just don't like my dad.
Right.
But
I'm not doing what you tell me.
Yeah. And maybe it was a product of being overfed eggs as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and just one day I said, no, enough is enough. After, years, decades of every meal, 3 meals a day being eggs.
Right.
So, yeah, now I love eggs. They're brilliant food. It's the most versatile thing you can have.
Absolutely.
And oddly enough, I've kind of found eggs and whiskey come together. So
Okay.
a whiskey sour is the combination
That's good.
of my two worlds. Yeah.
That's a good point. The hybrid, the convergence of your past life and your current life.
Yeah, completely.
Well, so since there are so many different ways to eat eggs, the versatility, and even you talking about expanding in the cocktail, what's the quintessential way for you? How do you like to eat an egg?
So
Lunch is soon for me. I'm just kind of stimulating my appetite here too.
I'm a big scrambled egg lad. But I realized when I moved to America that that's a little bit more complicated than I first realized, because I don't know any other country in the world that goes, how would you like your eggs?
Right.
And I'll go into having brunch or a restaurant and they're like, how would you like your eggs? And you're kind of paralyzed by choice. And the time I realized that the most was when I go scrambled. I thought, end of the question, dealt with. And I was like, would you like a dry or a wet scrambled? Sir?
What the hell? Where'd you get that option? I've never got that option.
So I'm like, how do I answer this? Medium?
What's a blend of both?
Yeah, exactly.
A moist egg.
Well, tell you what, give me half and half, and then I can have a more informed decision for the rest of my life.
Brilliant, yeah.
So, yeah, scrambled egg would be my go-to, yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I'm a good 3-minute egg guy, though.
I think that's good, too. I just love eggs and the versatility there. Now, the thing is maybe it seems like I'm fixated on eggs, but no, it's actually a parallel to Irish whiskey. So I am going to pull this all together, I assure you.
I'm excited to hear this, yeah.
So bacon, okay? This is the other thing, because I love English breakfast. I love Irish breakfast. Had the pleasure of spending some time in Cork, and every morning is like eating that, the blood black pudding and all of that, You like the bacon better here?
No way.
No way? Okay.
No, Irish rashers are a staple of the Irish breakfast.
Yeah.
Like, for anyone that doesn't know, an Irish breakfast is, of course, it's got some Bellevue eggs.
Yeah.
No Irish breakfast is complete without my family's stock of eggs. You have... Now, for me, you have sausage, Irish rasher, which is a thick cut bacon. My preference would be Denny, but you also have black and white pudding, it's an Irish delicacy. Yeah. For anyone that might be put off by this, it's a blood pudding and a separate pudding. The white pudding is made from intestines.
Right.
A bit of an Irish delicacy, may sound a bit traumatic, but for anyone that's not into it, I will certainly eat their leftovers.
Yeah, black pudding is one of the greatest things ever. And
Yep.
once you start getting winter spices in there, I was in Chicago last weekend.
Yeah.
And I had some, it was the best black pudding I ever had. Because they had like allspice and cinnamon in there. I was like,
Oh.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Blew me away.
You're getting great black puddings as well as in the Irish breakfast. I always like mine with a bit of mushroom as well.
Oh, yeah. Tomato too, typically, right?
I was having I was back in Dublin, and this is last month, and we went to my favourite Irish breakfast in Dublin is a pub called Slackery's.
Okay.
And it's my favourite Irish breakfast for a couple of reasons. The pub opens at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's an early house in Dublin, and it's the only early house that serves food. This happens to be not only my favourite Irish breakfast in Dublin, it's also Anthony Bourdain's favourite Irish
No
breakfast.
shit. Okay.
So, that's probably the end of the similarities. It's a little bit like back to the porn star and me.
Sure.
That's my one link to Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah, you got that, the brooding masculinity. That's a good thing. You got that, Tim. You got that.
But the thing that I was wondering was, what right does the tomato have being in an Irish breakfast? Where did that come from? Because Ireland isn't exactly known for its tomato growing.
Right.
And it's just a weird thing.
But it is commonplace, though, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a staple. And I don't know the history behind that because it's odd.
Yeah, I know.
Why the tomato? At one stage where we like apple, tomato wins. I just don't know. I don't know.
It is kind of just a strange configuration there.
Yeah.
Because everything else makes a lot of sense, even color-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is just a symbol of the brightness and the optimism that you need because it's always so goddamn dreary in Ireland.
But
weather-wise,
like it's in a plate full of meat.
Yeah.
There you have this this crazy fruit there.
The notion of healthiness.
Yeah,
right?
and I'd take it we don't need to go into is it a veg, is it a fruit?
No,
it's
good.
What's the phrase? Knowledge is knowing a tomato is fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad.
That's right.
Yeah.
The application of knowledge. But so we've been talking about food, but this is all to say that Ireland is very close to its food. It's very close to its livestock. The cheese, the butter is remarkable there. And whiskey as well, a big part of the culture. So for you, was it always, because this is your family's business, how long was it single generation, multi-generation?
It's a single generation. My dad started it when he was 17.
Wow.
He always wanted to be a pharmacist,
Really?
but didn't have, so my grandfather was a pharmacist, but my dad didn't have the grades to go into pharmacy.
Yeah.
And we had a small bit of land, not big enough to do dairy or any kind of arable farming. So it's actually a choice between pigs or egg farming.
Okay.
So because that was the amount of land we had, it had to be some kind of intensive farming.
Sure.
And thankfully he picked eggs. And started off with 2,000 hens. Today we have 80,000, but we would pack, distribute and deliver basically 240,000 hens worth of eggs. So it's 1.7 million eggs a week.
That's crazy.
Is what we do, yeah.
So here's an interesting thing. That sounds like growth, business growth. It sounds like success as well in terms of revenue, just to put it in that perspective.
Yeah.
So seeing your family start with a very small business and having it grow immensely, does that change the means for you guys? Like the housings that you can live in, the opportunities, traveling, all that stuff?
Yeah, well, we stayed in the same house. Yeah, it's down the road. It's obviously the egg farm isn't in an urban centre,
Right.
so it's actually down the lane. It's the egg farm, and the house is there. I love our family home. I've been in it since day one. So I think things changed for my family similar to how things changed in Ireland for everyone.
Yeah.
So we went through a massive boom growth period, kind of as I was growing up, really. So international travel was then a thing, whereas before going to Dublin was a big mission.
Really?
I remember that. Like, we're from rural Ireland,
Yeah.
so it was maybe we'd go to Dublin once a year, twice a year.
And it's crazy because how far? It's not that far.
No, it's only an hour drive.
Oh, Jesus. I thought it was a little bit farther.
Yeah, but before that, it would have been, the road network is improved.
Yeah.
But we kind of grew. Initially, the egg farm was only delivering to local areas, but then we started delivering into Dublin, and then that's how I started to get to know Dublin and the rest of the country. Basically, you'll hear people knowing their city or country through pubs.
Yeah.
Whereas me, it was through convenience stores and supermarkets, basically places that would sell eggs.
Yeah.
That's how I know. So if you ever hear me giving you directions, ask for it in pub speak rather than, your 2 7-Elevens and a Walmart and a Kroger away.
I like it both ways.
Yeah.
Though. I think that's kind of a brilliant way to look at it.
Yeah.
But Ireland experienced this big boom, and it seems like your father didn't have the grades to be a pharmacist, but you seemed very driven looking at your kind of academic career. Was that an expectation from your folks that, Tim, you got to go to university, you have to do these?
So in Ireland, we're pretty lucky. We've free third level education. It's probably the greatest thing we've ever brought in terms of policy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So my parents, it wasn't free education, but my generation, yes. And that kind of meant that there was this opportunity for a whole generation to go to college, something that was always kind of like the goal for your parents. So I was lucky in that sense. Like I think the actual cost of me going to third level was €1,500 a year.
Good Lord.
And we were up in arms. It says it's free.
Dude, so a master's degree here cost me $80,000.
Yeah, well, master's is
it's still
more,
cheaper, it's gotta be, right?
Yeah, master's is more expensive. That would count as like fourth level, but in terms of your degree, that's free. Once you have the grades, it's free.
That's amazing.
Free. So it's it's on par with being a doctor or an accountant or whatever.
Yeah.
Now college isn't for everyone, but
No,
if you want to go that route, it's fantastic in Ireland. So we've had a far more educated workforce than ever before, which is actually probably why we host a lot of American companies.
Yeah.
As well as low corporate tax, but that's a different thing. But,
it
it genuinely is something amazing that policy is brought in.
Yeah, I mean, like, my jaws kind of dropped because I would love to not have to pay back these loans.
Yeah,
and that's the American way.
Yeah,
in terms of education and everything. But you being familiar with commerce because your father owns this business, you're traveling, probably helping deliver eggs and all of this. Yeah. That was a pretty good bit of interest in that field.
The table talk or the learning by osmosis at the dinner table was incredible. Like it was, and that was kind of why I got into the world of business, and that's why I did a business degree. That's later why I did a master's, but it was always tied to food, and later whiskey. So it's
some kind of consumable, right?
Yeah.
Man, I love, I'll have my phone, like, even if it's on silent, I'll have it on my desk, and if it's on a piece of paper, it's like a fucking amplifier. It's like, I can't even, like, be on the phone. It's crazy how this resonation happens. But food has been a big part of your life, consumables, if you will. And when you get all this stuff kind of done, right, so you finish at university, were your eyes set on something more global? Were you thinking about moving out of Ireland?
No. My first taste of moving abroad was I went to New Zealand.
Yeah.
And that was part of another great scheme at Irish University was what we call Erasmus years. So I went over to New Zealand. There was a study abroad exchange. And I always joke around, I went to learn the language. So I was lucky enough to go there for the guts of a year. It's an amazing country, but that was kind of my first big travel, particularly to live. And I kind of felt I was on the Truman Show because I traveled for 24 hours to get from Ireland to New Zealand, only for it to look like the south of Ireland, a place called County Kerry. And it's like,
no kidding.
Is something up here? Like, okay, there's penguins going around here, but it looks remarkably like Ireland. And, there's a lot happening in New Zealand, but the place that I was, a place called Dunedin, was very reminiscent of Ireland in terms of geography, landscape, even people. Like New Zealanders are very similar to the Irish, and I guess have a similar-esque attitude towards their bigger brother neighbour of Australia that we would to the UK. But it's lovely, lovely people, amazing country.
Yes, it's funny that it's like, all right, I'm going to get ready to travel here. And I'm going to go to a place that feels like next door, which is so strange to me. But it doesn't feel different. So you come back and you're thinking, okay, well, I guess that's a sign. I should probably stick around.
Yeah, it was kind of, I'd done my travel. The idea was I was going to come back and the play was to join the father and work, build an egg empire together and rule it with an iron fist.
An eggpire.
An eggpire, yeah. The exceptional egg empire, yeah. And what I did after that was I wanted to get to learn so our family business at that time was selling to convenience stores. So your 7-Elevens, essentially.
Right.
But we weren't selling eggs to your Walmarts, your Kroger's.
The big chains.
Yeah, and I wanted to learn a bit about that business. So I worked for a company called Danone. You guys call it Dannon. Well, it is spelled differently over here. And they have an infant nutrition area. So I was selling baby food was my job. Now, I wasn't going over to women rubbing bellies and saying it's time.
Papa Tim's get some food for it.
Yeah, it was. I was selling into the grocery stores and that way. Yeah. So I learned tons about that, and that was really interesting. It's the first job out of college to give me a company car, and you sell baby food, so that was a little odd. But I love that kind of stuff. Like you should see me in a grocery store. I'm a terror to go shopping with because I'm so fascinated by kind of the science and psychology of grocery stores. When you walk in, it's always fresh fruit and veg. And the thinking behind that is, I'll get all the healthy things for me. Then I'll feel less guilty about all the other crap totally I buy. And even just like I geek out massively on planograms. Mm-hmm. So
it came from retail.
Yeah, exactly. The store layout and, whether it's left to right, where it's positioned on the shelf, and not just eye level, but just that fascinates me.
It's crazy, and you know what? It's really not that different, and I know it's probably not as artful, but it is like curating an exhibit. Right?
Oh yeah,
it totally is, because you're trying to create an experience, but at the end of this experience, it is to drive you to buy something.
Yeah,
and then the periphery is always kind of like the easy to grab stuff,
Yeah,
it's
or like in convenience stores, they put like the milk, the bread. The stuff down at the back, so that you have to pass through
all
everything.
The rubbish.
Yeah, and there's stuff where like the IKEA layout, the way you have to navigate that. And I always think that's interesting way stores do that.
I think that IKEA intentionally tries to capture at least 2 people each shift, because it's like they're going to send you to a warehouse of which you'll never return. There is that angle of IKEA every single time, but again, a brilliant place. So I can see all these kinds of thoughts. And you're like, okay. So I'm getting some understanding of consumer behavior, getting understanding of how maybe groceries work, the layout, people, maybe what they like to eat, right, or what they like to buy. And so seems like it's the perfect thing, perfect insider info to bring back to Dad. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And somewhere along that, I got maybe a little derailed in a nice way. I decided to work for the Irish Food Board.
Interesting.
So this was really cool. Basically, Ireland was going through a bad time at that point. And the Irish Food Board decided we're going to launch a response to this. And so they hired 25 people to work with high growth export orientated food and drink companies. So it was looking beyond Irish borders. And it's like, how do we, give an injection of talent, resource for these Irish companies to grow their business abroad? So the company I got working with in particular was the Cooley Distillery, which is now owned by Jim Beam.
No shit.
And fantastic whiskies. But at that time was small in the world of whiskey. Or Irish whiskey was even small in the world of whiskey then. And worked with them. So that was where I really got to go from liking whiskey to understanding whiskey.
Right.
Like people always ask you, or you've chatted to different whiskey ambassadors.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm always very skeptical of, I got into it because my grandfather liked it or introduced me. I'm like, if you hear me telling that story, like, smack me around. That's not a true story. Because I never had the imagination. I liked whiskey, but I never had the imagination of thinking, I can do this as my job.
Right.
Like, I like Snickers bars or Mars bars. I don't think about, I'm going to be the ambassador for Mars bars.
Ironically, you didn't like baby food, and you said you had to peddle that shit.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah.
So that was my whiskey moment, because you rarely get to experience like tasting all these different whiskeys. That's a rare thing unless you seek it out. So that was how I got into it and learning about, and it's infectious. The more you learn, it takes you down a different tunnel, and you just consume more and more in terms of whiskey, but also in terms of the knowledge of whiskey.
They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Luckily.
So that was me getting into whiskey. Went over to New York. My first time really going. Actually, it was my first time going to the US. And started working the scene there. Firstly on doing research on coming up with private label Irish whiskey. So that was a big part of their business in Europe. So the idea was, America's huge. Let's do that model over there. Right. But very quickly realized actually very few grocery stores can legally sell whiskey. In fact, you can only do it in 14 states.
Very, very
so it wasn't really a viable thing. We did do a cool project with Trader Joe's Irish whiskey.
Cool.
So that was something I started, and that I started working on the brand side. So doing ambassadorial stuff on Connemara, Greenore, Kilbeggan, Tyrconnell, and that was really my whiskey moment, if you will.
So when you think about, so first thing is that we've been talking about this background, this tradition of your family and kind of getting into academia and now kind of introducing the whiskey while we're sipping Tullamore D.E.W, the classic, right?
The original.
The original. Yeah. You gotta have that kind of gravelly voice, right? The one that's been with us, the one that has really picked up so much traction in Austin particularly, man. I'd love to see it, more and more people calling for it and shooting it at live rock shows.
Yeah.
That's a great fucking thing.
Yeah.
So this is a brilliant whiskey, and I imagine as we talk about your maybe introduction into Tullamore D.E.W, when you talk about being a brand ambassador, it seems like you got the intelligence to think about the psychology of things and how perhaps people want to interact, what kinds of communication you should use. But do you fancy yourself someone that's pretty good in a crowd, pretty good to rally a group of people together?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I'm not a presenter, but I present for my job.
Yeah, right.
That's how I describe it. And it comes with practice. I wouldn't have said I was necessarily a natural presenter. What I like about being an ambassador right now is it's an extension of yourself.
Yeah.
If you do it right, or if you're lucky enough, it's an extension of yourself. It's yourself dialed up to 10. And that's what's great about it for me. Like, I work with Tullamore D.E.W. I love Irish whiskey. I go to bars that I want to hang around in.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be a little bit different if, let's say, I was a Scotch ambassador. Sure. You know, I don't know if I want to go to steakhouses and uptight whiskey bars. You know, that's not who I am. So, like, I'm a big believer you can only probably ever work for like 2 brands, 3 brands. You know, you're not going to see me peddling tequila anytime soon for lots of obvious reasons.
There's some cognitive dissonance I get just thinking about you drinking and pouring.
Yeah. So I'm very lucky in that sense of my work is just stuff I would do anyway.
Yeah.
I'm fanatic about Irish pubs. I love Irish whiskey as well. And I enjoy the bars that we work with, where Tullamore D.E.W works with too. So it's an extension of self. Absolutely. Is kind of what it is.
Given that the brand is, rather you are an extension of that brand, it runs through your bloods, probably figuratively and literally, right? That is there a point in which you draw the line and say, my personal life, my personal business, if you will, that's coming out. I'm not going to be revealing that, because it seems like a dangerous road to teeter. Where does the brand begin and you end? That kind of thing. You know what I mean?
It's a very blurred line. and I like that. Because that way you're passionate about it. That way it's not an obstacle. I probably, more than most, let that happen all the time.
Yeah.
Like, there wouldn't be a whole lot of barriers to that. So I'm quite comfortable with letting that completely blur over.
Yeah.
Like, it affects, you know, when you go on holiday, you know, it's, or what you do on holiday. Like, my last holiday was a whiskey holiday. On a book I'm working on with a couple of friends. We're working on an Irish whiskey pub book.
Amazing.
So, you know, that's how I spend my holidays. You know, you could easily think I'm still working.
Right. But you really do love it.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, the old cliched phrase of, you know, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. It's kind of that. And then a lot of the projects that I'll work on kind of start off in the personal world.
Yeah.
and kind of crawl their way into, well, actually that works really well for Tully. Yeah,
that's amazing.
That's what we'll do. So
it's a hell of a gig. It sounds like.
Yeah, no, it is. It completely is.
Not so bad.
Yeah.
Well, it's good. You talk about something like we were saying, the mates in the portfolio. Glenfiddich Dave.
Yeah.
This is like the thing he want to be a DJ and pedal scotch.
Yeah.
What the fuck? That's like if he was to write his own resume at 14. Like that was what it would have been. So he gets to do this stuff, and it's so cool. Just that you guys, William Grandsons, which for me, these shows can be like about brands, like push this product. Like you guys have these brilliant minds. Are really just fun people that embody it's like superheroes have that particular power, and it's like, they couldn't have any other power. That makes sense. They can shoot green arrows, or they can swim underwater and breathe. Like each of you, this was like the talent and the superhero power you're supposed to have.
Yeah, admittedly, at the superhero convention, I stand out pretty poorly. But when it comes to that, it's an extension of yourself. It's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And you really get an opportunity to bring your ideas to the brand. And thankfully it makes sense. We're just a good marriage.
It really is. Huh? I'm a little envious here. I'm thinking about just real quickly. I had a moment flash in my head where I said, "What am I doing with my career?" Tim, help me get. No, I'm kidding. So Tullamore D.E.W is a big piece of this chapter, and we have some lovely bottles. We've been sipping the original 80 proof. The thing is easy. It's clean. It's beautiful. What can we sip next? Actually, when I think about the future, because I think about the past, present, future when we have these conversations. Cider cask is innovation and future, so I'd like to try that last as we talk about the future things. But this single malt, right, which I've never had before. This is a 14-year-old at 41.3. How do you feel about this guy?
This is a pretty good play toy that we have right now. So our 14 single malt, single malts is kind of rare in the world of Irish whiskey. We do it, but we're not necessarily known for it. And this can stand up against any Irish single malt, against any single malt, period. Yeah. What's really cool about this is we mature it and finish it in 4 different types of casks. So
which I'm very interested. Yeah.
So casks that have held bourbon, port, sherry, and Madeira.
Nice.
So it's a real collection of. It's an aroma of flavor, like
sultry, man.
Yeah, well, it needs a second sip because there's so much happening there that you'll get so much on the first sip. You'll revisit it, and you might pick up the Madeira cask influence, whereas the first time you might get the bourbon and port, and it's a lot happening in this glass.
Yeah,
it's like a fruit bowl. I like that you're diving into. So
should we share a sip of this? Are we able to?
Yeah, definitely.
Because this is one of those things, man. Because Teeling is another. They actually make a single malt as well, and it's an exciting category that's growing.
Yeah, and that's what's happening with Irish whiskey right now. Like up in 1975, you had 2 distilleries in Ireland.
That's crazy.
We're the country that invented whiskey.
Yeah,
and we had just 2 distilleries. But now we're gonna have 29, 30 distilleries. So that's pretty explosive growth.
Brilliant.
So you're starting to see a lot of new whiskies, whether it's old traditions revived, old brands revived, old distilleries revived, or it's brand spanking new distilleries that have never had a history or pedigree in it. But what it means is you're getting lots of different changes in liquids. So cider cask, which we'll chat about later, is an example of that. But even this, like it's a 4 cask maturation and finish. So that wasn't happening.
So I just took the first smell on this, and I'm like, holy shit, man. This actually reminds me of the countryside. It has a very kind of like farmy smell to it, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Reminds me of French stuff.
Yeah. And all grows up in bourbon casks. So you get that honey vanilla note.
Yeah.
And then at the end of its life, let's say, we'll then take some of that liquid and finish it in port pipes. That would typically be 4 to 6 months. We'll take other liquid and put that into sherry butts, again 4 to 6 months. And then we'll take another component of that liquid and finish it in Madeira drums for 2 to 3 months. The Madeira imparts flavor, the Madeira cask imparts flavor quite quickly. So we only do that for 2 to 3 months. And then we vat it all together at the end, and you get this 14-year-old single malt, which if I was to give a one-word description, it's more than one word. It's our pineapple whiskey. It's very fresh, bright, it's like biting into juicy, fresh pineapple.
You know, it is, but there's this cool element. There's this funk there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a slight straw-like funk, you know, that you get in brilliant French cheeses. Now, this sometimes in mezcal that comes from like lactic fermentation or whatever, but this is so much. This is a thinking piece. Because, you know, I think to its credit, and maybe some people may criticize Irish whiskey for this, but totally the original, the traditional, right?
Yeah.
It's easy. You know it. It's familiar. It doesn't have to challenge you. But this is like, okay, Tully's going to make a concept record. Yeah. You're going to have to listen to all 10 songs, even if it's 80 minutes long. Yep. You know what I mean? Like, this is really a thinking piece. And when you take it out and have people taste it, what are some of the things that they give you in terms of feedback?
Yeah, a lot of fresh fruits is what we get. And it's interesting. We have a Tullamore D.E.W 18-year-old single malt, and it's the same cask program, but it completely changes. You get more dark fruits, berries, dried fruits as well, whereas this is more on the brighter side.
Yeah, crisper, for sure.
Yeah, and it's just everything Irish whiskey should be in terms of, yes, it has that friendliness, but if you're making smooth and friendly, that's just dull and boring. That's bland.
Yeah.
And this is packed up with that boatload of flavor.
Right.
Maybe coming from those
this
forecasts.
is getting to know Tim. Right? This is diving into the mind and the nuance and the complexities of man himself.
I like that. I'm gonna steal that. Yeah.
So as we sip this 14 years brilliant single malt, tell me how you met Tully. Tell me how you got introduced.
Yeah. So I would have, like, my whiskey moments really started in the US.
Yeah.
So when I was with Cooley, I was getting to know Tully. I'd always known what it was, but now I had an appreciation for whiskey.
Sure.
Now I was kind of looking at that in different ways. So I got to know Tully while I was in the US. And then when I left the world of whiskey, moved back to Ireland and started working with the family business, whiskey was the passion, the hobby. So I was collecting whiskey. I was going to whiskey events and just really, still enjoy it. But I was really, really enjoying the whole whiskey discovery. And I had no intention of going back into the world of whiskey. I was like, oh, it's good to me, but you know, now's time to work with Dad and build this exceptional egg empire together. And I didn't really have any intentions of looking for another job. But during the whiskey circuit, if you will, when I was living in New York, I bumped into a couple of guys and girls at Balvenie, Glenfiddich, and William Grant acquired Tullamore D.E.W back in 2010. And one day I was like, right, maybe I'll just kind of threw my name in the hat.
Yeah.
It was way back in February, and didn't really think about it. And got called up for interviews, phone interviews, stuff like this, and went along with it, but wasn't
you still
really...
weren't probably thinking, like, I probably won't get it. Right?
No, I didn't think I'd ever get it, because I didn't think I'd bumped into like these mega star Glenfiddich Balvenie ambassadors, Hendrix ambassadors, who had this pedigree, this history and track record, whether it was bartending or working at distilleries or all this kind of stuff. So I completely wrote myself off. I didn't tell my parents that I was doing this, because why would I bring that up if there's not a chance of getting it? Why would I upset my parents in that way?
Yeah, it's like introducing a girl to them that you know you're going to break up with.
Yeah.
Right? Like
you're the master of metaphors and similes. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So, and it just kind of escalated. Then, like, I remember my first kind of proper interview. So I was delivering eggs in the Eggmobile, so this bright yellow van.
Did you have a uniform? Please tell me you had a uniform.
We didn't.
Oh,
we didn't.
Not like a hat or anything?
No. And like, yeah, I know you're expecting chicken. So,
like a milkman hat or something.
But so delivering eggs, and I go up to the Tullamore D.E.W offices and like get changed in the back of the egg van for the interview, and go in, do the interview, and had a couple more interviews after that. But eventually I had to tell my parents, listen, funny thing happened. Somebody's going to fly me over to New York for an interview with this whiskey brand. Crazy. And it happened. Parents were really supportive because it's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how much fun I'd have with this, or I didn't realize how good I'd be at this.
Yeah.
And Tully's been perfect. Like, it's been a lot of fun. And I really couldn't have done this with another Irish whiskey, I think, is what's pretty key. Like I grew with Tully as Tully was growing with me. I was terrible when I started. Terrible.
What made you terrible?
It's a very weird job to know how you're getting on.
Yeah.
I guess it was, we talk about an extension of self, or you're just being yourself. I didn't have the confidence in myself to know that, yeah, I'm doing a good job here. You're just constantly trying to do better.
Right.
So,
you would have been just over 25, right?
Yeah, I was just 25.
That's an age where you don't really know a lot yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not jaded on the world just yet.
Oh, but like, I think a lot of it was moving to America. Like, I didn't know where I was going.
Yeah.
Looking at skyscrapers in New York and being like, genuinely, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
I don't want to paint a picture of egg farm to big city, but the
novel's coming out soon. Yeah, that's a brilliant title.
Small egg to big apple. Yeah. But it was a lot to take in. Like, Ireland and America have a lot of similarities, but there are contrasts to it. So there was kind of a couple of that new job. It took a while to get used to. But yeah.
Did you have one? You said your folks were very, very supportive.
Yeah.
And it was never bittersweet. They were always really wanting.
There was a couple of moments on that. Like, it was always like, listen, we'll support you, but we really don't want you to go. And here's why. So, yeah.
So now 6 years later, how do they feel?
Oh, it's much better than, let's say, when it was like
year
1, year 2, year
there,
3.
Right?
Yeah.
When you came to the States, did you have much of a support system? People that you were hanging out with, people that you knew?
Yeah, like, you'd have people at work that would support in that way, but you do have to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know people, but that was possibly a strength in terms of it forces you to go out and meet people.
Right.
You're quite happy to be in Chicago versus New York because they're all equally as foreign.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just about getting out there and getting to meet people. And, when you're in the world of whiskey, it's pretty easy to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was a great city to get to know, New York, or a great country to get to know,
That's a great thing.
America. So yeah, I can now say I've been to all 50 states.
No shit.
Yeah.
Which is the most dismal?
Ooh.
I got my answer, but I haven't even been there. You've actually probably been to this state.
Oh no, genuinely, I've been to all 50
no,
states.
I totally believe you.
I did. What was it? 2 years ago. 50 states in 30 days in the search for America's best Irish pubs on St. Patrick's Day.
Were you in the bus?
No, the bus wouldn't have been able to do that in 30 days.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's a hell of a tour.
Yeah, it gets pretty stuck on Hawaii and Alaska. So, it was rapid. It was fast. There's phenomenal pubs around America.
Oh, yeah.
There's some bad ones too.
Sure.
But there's some weird and wonderful ways of celebrating St. Patrick's Day. Like, the ones that stick out the most are New London, Wisconsin. They have a tradition where it started off with 4 guys that would dress up in leprechauns outfits and change all of New London signs to New Dublin the week of St. Patrick's Week.
That's clever.
Started off as a prank, and then the city, I guess, or the town said, actually, no, we're going to do this all the time. So they legally changed their name to New Dublin. Really sucks if you're a trucker who's looking for New London and just assumes because he's in New Dublin it must be nearby.
And it's I might be an enemy here in New Dublin.
As his sat nav is going mental. It's like you're here. So yeah, that was nuts. Arkansas, Hot Springs, Arkansas, the world's shortest St. Patrick's Day parade.
Really? Shortage is like people are short, or it's just duration wise?
No, it's neither height or duration. It's distance.
Oh,
so it's 92 feet long. 30,000 people come out to watch this spectacle, and I had the honor, pleasure, and privilege of being the Grandmaster. No, not the Grandmaster General. The Toastmaster General of the parade.
Wow,
last year, and yeah. 30,000 people attend this. It's just 92 feet short, and it's the world's shortest St. Patrick's Day parade. Last year it was hosted by Alfonso Ribeiro, better known as Carlton Banks,
That's right,
and pro wrestling legend Ric Flair.
Ric Flair was there?
Yeah.
Did you hang out with Ric Flair?
Yeah. I kind of half know his daughter in a weird way. No, that's extending that.
You were drunk and had relations. I get it. That's half knowing.
No, a friend of mine's a pro wrestler, and she's very good friends with both Ric Flair and his daughter Charlotte. So.
That's brilliant. So 92 feet. So given that is such a short distance, do you have to make every drink really count?
So they have like a mile long, get ready, but we're only playing our instruments. We're only marching in this 92-foot area. It's a place called Bridge Street, and it's a bridge, and it's 92 feet long. So that's where the action happens. It happens on Bridge Street, and they've had to fight off competitors before.
Really?
So I think it was Boulder, Colorado, threatened to do just 90 feet. And they're like,
this is the pettiest argument, almost literally the pettiest of arguments. No, we're going to be shorter.
Yeah, so that they activated their doomsday device. They're like, well, listen, if you do that, we're going to be forced to march on the spot, and we'll have like a 1 foot, call it a 1 centimeter parade, whatever it is.
And they'll send Ric Flair over.
We will do that. And eventually the Boulder parade died out, and they both decided, okay, we'll both be the shortest. We'll both do 92 feet.
They agreed on that.
And the Boulder one died out. So yeah, you want the world's shortest St. Patrick's Day parade, you go to Hot Springs, Arkansas.
This is maybe
for the 17th annual St. Patrick's Day.
This is fucking we could put this on the Discovery Channel. This is like a travel show right now. This is an amazing thing. Ric Flair showed up.
Yeah.
That hair, man. That's brilliant.
And to keep it kind of his hometown, Charlotte, North Carolina.
He's from Charlotte. I didn't know that.
He spent time there.
Yeah.
I think he lives in Atlanta now.
Yeah.
But Charlotte, North Carolina is host to the world's largest pub crawl, and it's a St. Patrick's Day pub crawl. 23,000 people show up for that, and it's the world's biggest pub crawl.
That's amazing.
Again, I had the chance to be the Toastmaster General of the world's largest pub crawl. So
thankless job you've got, Tim.
It's
no one recognizes you. You don't there's no traction.
I'm breaking world records, all over the place, like world's shortest St. Patrick's Day parade, largest pub crawl, and to complete the trifecta, the trilogy of world records, myself and the fine folks in Fido, Chicago, have the honor of having done the world's biggest Irish coffee.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Did anybody get into it? Like literally jump into it?
I got into the empty glass to clean it.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's that. There you go. Thankless for sure.
Yeah. Well, I got a good photo out of it too. But 234 gallons of Irish coffee goodness.
34 gallons.
Yeah,
that's a brilliant thing.
Yeah. So for all our metric fans out there, that's I think 885 liters.
Roughly, just under 900 liters.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah.
Do you have a fascination with wrestling? Is this something that I picked up on maybe on social media, or is this? I'm
a massive pro wrestling fan.
Okay. That's what I thought.
And liked it as a kid. But my friend Rebecca, she's a wrestler with WWE.
Yeah. Wow.
And when she got up and coming, and kind of got me back into it, because we chat about it and stuff like that. So she's goes under Becky Lynch, she's wrestled at WrestleMania. She's won the women's title. Yeah. Has she won? I think she has. Yeah. I'm really revealing myself as a bad friend.
No, I like this. This is good.
Yeah,
you're a horrible person.
We would. You're a good judge of character, and we would have wrestling conversations on her character and finishing maneuvers and all this kind of stuff. So she's doing unbelievably well. She's on Raw, SmackDown, different pay-per-views all the time, and she's you think I travel, she's traveling all the time.
That's incredible.
So yeah, I'd be into my pro wrestling to tune in to see how my friend is doing. Yeah.
Amazing. So then I have to ask you, I just watched They Live again for the 10th time, and Roddy Piper is in it, of course. Favorite 80s wrestler for WWF?
Well, I got into wrestling much later, so I was a big 90s guy.
Yeah. Some great 90s.
Yeah. So Undertaker. Yeah. In
6'10". That dude's massive.
Yeah. Texan fella. Yeah.
I saw him one time buying blank CDs at Best Buy when I worked there.
Right.
The Undertaker came in. everybody notices that guy.
Yeah.
Even out of costume.
Yeah. So I was
Massive.
a big Undertaker fan, and then more recently a CM Punk fan.
Yeah.
But I got Becky Lynch. Has to be Becky Lynch. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
In this last 6 years, before we talk about kind of the future in this last
Mm-hmm.
chapter, how has the perception of Irish whiskey changed?
I think my best way of putting that is when I first came over, you may have guessed I spent a lot of time in Irish pubs. So I would go to Irish pubs around the US and you'd see maybe 2 or 3 Irish whiskies.
Yeah.
Like, what was pretty crazy is there was a better single malt Scotch selection than there were Irish whiskies in an Irish pub. So, like, that's like a French restaurant having more Italian food than it does French. And yeah, that's still probably the case today, but it's changing. It's changing a lot. People are very, very curious about what's happening with Irish whiskey. Like, they're curious. They know there's stuff happening, and there's all these different distilleries, and there's all these different liquids being done, and brands revived or started, but nobody's kind of wrapped their head around, well, tell me why I'm so excited about this. So people are getting to fall in love with Tullamore D.E.W and the original.
See, but if you know you're going to do that every time now.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was born here. We got to take credit for this, Jack, Tim, and I.
So people are now beginning to expand beyond that. So they're diving into our single malts, like our 14-year-old single malt, or they're looking at pot still Irish whiskey as well. So it's really a journey that is come a long way, but it's really in its infancy. It's just beginning.
Do you feel responsible at all for advancing that?
I will take all of the credit, even the undue credit there. Yeah, so I think in time to come, people will look back at it as the Tullamore Tim era. And, credit me with like, well, why did that distillery open? Oh, well, it was in the Tullamore Tim era. So, yeah.
There was the Bronze era, and then there was the Tim era. That's it.
Yeah. So it's... So yeah, the third golden age of Irish whiskey. Yeah, it's great to be a part of it.
At some point, I got to see your wand because you've obviously just casted this spell on this modern age of Irish whiskey. No,
it's great that I'm letting it happen.
That's right.
Yeah. So
wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Yeah,
government, no, you're the man.
No. But yeah, it really is exciting what's happening because like more and more distilleries, more liquids, but more different types of whiskey.
I think that's amazing, and I think that's a great transition as we talk about. This is the newest, right? The cider cask.
Yeah, this is just fresh out last month in Texas. So what's cool about this is, it's the world's. I used to think it was just Ireland's first, but it's actually a world first. Cider cask finished whiskey. So what we do is, we take Irish apples, we press them, and we have apple juice. We then season the cask with the apple juice. That while ferments and becomes cider in the cask. So we'll have that, season the cask for 3 months. We'll then disgorge it, send the cider back to the cidery, and they use it, whereas we put our Tullamore D.E.W into the cider cask, and it takes on all those flavours. And we let that happen again for 3 months, and voila, at the end of it, you have Tullamore D.E.W cider cask.
It's not only innovative, but it's it's pays homage to the things you would drink in a pub.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because I don't care for lager much, but I love cider and whiskey.
And
beautiful thing.
What's really cool about it is it's like an old new thing. Yeah. Like, whiskey was in cider cask before back in the day. Yeah. And what I really like about it is not everyone drinks port, sherry, and Madeira.
Right.
Their kind of maybe first experience of that is probably a finished whiskey that has used something like that. Yeah. Most drinkers have a good understanding or expectation on what cider cask whiskey will taste like, or they have an intrigue. Yeah. They're like, oh yeah, I drink cider all the time, or I know what cider tastes like. So it's really interesting to do that. I think this whiskey is like biting into like a spiked apple.
Dude. So here's the interesting thing. Love Calvados, love apple brandy. Love it to death, right?
Yeah.
However, The thing is that it gets so rounded and mellowed out that the crispness in that bite, the tart kind of crisp of an apple, you lose it a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, this does something that no apple brandy I've ever had does. And that is, it kind of forgoes the kind of the softer notes of apples, and all you get is that acidic bite, which is just absolutely brilliant. And because it was the first time I heard it was out. I was at Nickel City the other night, and I said, "Let me get a Jack Rose with this." It was far superior to the original because it really tastes of apple.
Awesome.
It's a brilliant thing. And then you have that nice soft creaminess from the grain, you know. So this is a really exemplary example of how to push the category forward. What are people saying about this when you're out and about?
Oh, people are loving it. Our biggest problem is we have a limited amount of it.
Oh, no.
So because,
I didn't know that.
Well, because we're dependent on the apple harvest in Ireland, we can't do it until we've had another harvest. So this will be like a seasonal release, if you like. But we will have more of it for next year. But it's a gem. It's different. It's interesting in a way because yes, you get that apple note to it for sure. Yeah. But I think you're also picking up the fermentation aspect to it that's happening. Because fizz is the wrong word, but you kind of get this.
That's a great word. I think that's a great word to describe it. It's that just what it might feel as it percolates on your tongue. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So fizz is the right word, as I was saying. And you get this liveliness to it. Yeah. Like it's not pepperiness, but it's definitely a mouthfeel. And there's a lot happening with it. And as those apple notes appear. I
use the word electric sometimes. Neon. Right? Because it's so vibrant and it's crisp and it's almost like blinding in how bold and kind of crisp and zingy it is. You know?
Yeah.
This is just, it's a remarkable thing. And as weird as this thought is, if you only could use eggs in a cask. Because I think I know you get some eggs and it seems like they're around all year.
Yeah. Our hens lay 365, yeah.
See? Someday. Maybe that's the next step in innovation.
Yeah, it'd have to be fresh egg. We don't want that rotten egg smell coming. Yeah.
Do you see this category even going further with innovation? Different blends and things?
Yeah, and if you look at Irish whiskey regulation, so if you look at the boring stuff, the laws of it, it's got enough flexibility, more flexibility than Scotch does. And I'll give you 2 examples of what makes Irish whiskey, just by definition, an innovative category. Yeah. One is we do a whiskey style that nobody else in the world does. It's a whiskey style called pot still whiskey. Yeah. So it's that combination of malted and unmalted barley. We spend a lot of time talking about single malt, and this is a category that has germinated and ungerminated barley. So any Redbreast, Green Spot fans out there, this is that style. And that style gives you this creamy mouth texture. It's thick, it's fatty, but it also has this spice and pepperiness to it. Sure. Really, really interesting. And no other whiskey category does that style. And that's quintessential Irish whiskey. That is, I'll be brief on this, but this comes about from when we were under British rule. Yeah. They wanted to put a tax on Irish whiskey. Yeah. And they started off by putting a tax on the size of your stills. We just used smaller stills. So they tried again. And it's like, what did they need to make whiskey? It's like, they use malted barley. Yeah. And we were like, okay, let's try this, a mix of a mash bill of malted and unmalted. And the good news was it avoided the tax. The exceptional news was it created this new style of whiskey.
Yeah, a delicious one at that.
Exactly. So we do pot still whiskey. So if you're in Scotland, you have grain, you have malt as individual components or as a blend. Right. In Ireland, we have a third style of whiskey of grain, malt, and pot still. Yeah. And that's what Tullamore D.E.W, the original, is made of, all 3 styles. So amazing. Automatically you have more combinations and permutations there to play with. Another example of that is if you're talking about American whiskey, Scotch, Japanese, you're going to hear about oak a lot. We talk about how up to 70% of a whiskey's flavour comes from the cask it's been matured in. That can mean oak species, and it can also mean what that cask has held before, whether it's rum, port, Madeira, whatever. So there's a lot of combinations there to dictate flavor. We have an additional element, as in Irish whiskey needs to be matured for a minimum of 3 years in new wood.
Wood.
Nice. So now we're not going to be using soft woods because we don't.
Balsa wood would be the worst.
But we can use hardwoods. So stuff like cherry woods. So that's actually a kind of a new thing. As we've been defining Irish whiskey as an island, we've decided new wood. So taste-wise, we can. Now, some new wood might be terrible.
Sure. But you don't know unless you try. And that's
exactly.
the great thing, is that it's a frontier you can explore.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at that, or we've already looked.
Well, no,
we're
going to be Tim, obviously.
Yeah.
Once you say it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. So they're all looking towards me right now. And new wood is a flavor driver that only Irish whiskey has.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And I don't mean new oak, I mean new wood.
Sure.
As in, but think about that. That can escalate. Like, what if it's ash that has held sherry before?
Right.
Or what does ash that has held sherry taste like when it's held rum, or the different species of ash? So it's endless. Like, it really is. So they're just two examples of the potential liquid innovation that could come from Ireland. And it's going to be a very innovative time in the second golden era of Tim's era.
That's right.
Of Irish whiskey.
As long as you say it's okay.
As long as I say it's okay. So, yeah.
The dawning of another brilliant whiskey era.
Yeah.
Well, as we kind of wrap and we talk about the future, obviously there's flexibility in just the category and the classifications of Irish whiskey, which makes me excited. There was one that had this particular Irish oak species.
Yeah, it was probably Middleton Dark Gaelic.
That's exact.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So it's like just different, and you're kind of exploring these new things with the whiskey, the cider cask. I mean, this is brilliant, a new expression, something I never even would have thought.
Mm-hmm.
For you being, this is the era of Tim, the age of Tim. You've had this great stint.
Yep.
Tullamore D.E.W thus far, 6 years and counting. I can't imagine where seems like there is no limit to where you can go and what you can do. Is there a next step for you that's really clear?
And I get asked this question, and I'm like, there is no next position.
Yeah.
And my kind of focus has been evolving my current role.
Yeah.
And I continue for that, or seeing that happen. So like and I'm very project driven. So one of my big projects right now is working on an Irish whiskey book. So myself and my friends from the Dead Rabbit pub in New York, Jack McGarry and Sean Muldoon, we've been basically touring Ireland this year, visiting different every distillery there is.
Amazing.
And we're also working on traditional, old school, the hidden gem pubs in Ireland as well. So it's an Irish whiskey pub book. It's going to be titled From Barley to Blarney, a whiskey lover's guide to Ireland.
Clever, cheeky bastard.
And so that's a big project in terms of, shining a light on Irish whiskey as a whole, but also, making it easy when you go to Ireland. Give me something I'm not going to experience anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
What makes an Irish pub so special? Let me go see that. So, that's a big project, and that's how I'll evolve the role a bit more. And just pushing the boundaries of whether it's Irish whiskey, ambassadorship, helping others become great ambassadors too. And that's
a mentor of sorts.
Yeah. That's a big part of my world right now. And, there's so much left to do. There's when it comes to working on Irish whiskey drinks.
Yeah.
We don't have that many. We have Tipperaries, we have the Irish coffee, even the Irish coffee. We need to raise the Irish coffee game in Ireland. So we'll be doing a bit of work on that, but, just finding different drinks to showcase Tullamore D.E.W is going to be a big project, but there's a lot more to come.
These are logical expansions of the role. So 2 questions left. This is it. You guys, where are you headed after this, by the way? Got some more education to do? or just get to hang out? And
We're going to be experiencing the best of Austin bars. Yeah, that's the. So I'm here till Sunday morning.
Oh,
so
it's a long track for you. Then.
Yeah. Whenever I've been in Austin, it's been like a day, 2 days. This will be my longest stint. So one of the things I'm going to is Longhorns game.
Nice.
Looking forward to that. My first American college football experience.
Amazing.
So and then after that, I'll be back to New York on Sunday.
Amazing stuff. Well, so the first of the two is, you talk about expansion of your role, right?
Yeah.
But you're 31 now. Things change. We change. We get tired of traveling.
Yeah.
We get tired of drinking as much, but not entirely. What about family and that piece and settling down? Is that something that's on your radar too?
It's a while away. But yeah, you begin to think that way too. I feel like this is basically going to lead to me setting up a Bumble profile. But it's continuing to do the things I love. But you want to do that with people. I think as you get older, you definitely are more precious of your time and who you spend your time with. So I'm lucky enough that I have great friends and it's just spending more time with them and doing the things that we love and just different experiences. Really going out of your way to make sure you have an experience that you want to, whether it's visiting somewhere and just making time for the things that you want to do.
Yeah, it's a really important thing. Very important value to have. All right, so the last question. Perhaps someone's asked you this, perhaps not. But I ask every guest the same question. Get some good answers here. You are sipping, we'll make it more specific. So you're sipping the 14-year single malt in any bar in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you love to just sit there and sip and have a conversation with? Anybody living or deceased?
Well, we did mention my wrestling fandom.
It'd be dangerous to drink with The Undertaker, I think.
I'm more thinking
Really
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Oh, dude.
Yeah. But he'd probably be more cracked than I am, so he'd probably take away from me. It's got to be him. You got to imagine you have some good stories coming out of him.
Future president of the United States.
Yeah. It's go with him, but there's some that's tough. There's some musicians, there's some for me, soccer players as well. But yeah, let's go with the most electrifying man in all of entertainment. We'll go with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Yeah.
When people think about the single trait that they vote on for president, it is, do I want to have a drink with this guy?
Yeah.
Abso-fucking-lutely. It's The Rock, dude.
Yeah.
Ballers season 2.
I know.
It was amazing. Season 3, I think.
But the fear is he mightn't actually be that much fun. And what do you think he would drink?
Tequila.
Tequila?
Like he does in Ballers, actually. Yeah, he drinks he drinks Milagro. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, this has been, man, in the making. I think we've tried to make this happen for months now and caught each other real briefly last time in your stint in Austin. And been just a pleasure sipping through Tully with you, talking about life, talking about wrestling, talking about the fucking era of Tim. There should be a comment in there somewhere because it's not a fucking era for you. It's just like an era. But it's been brilliant, man, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay in Austin. And we have to keep in touch, and hopefully we'll get to visit you in Ireland. And
let's make that happen. Yeah,
that'd be lovely.
Yeah,
thanks so much, Tim.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Well, there we have it, Mr. Ireland himself, Mr. Tim Herlihy of Tullamore D.E.W, talking about his life, talking about kind of a lot of interesting things about Tim's rise to fame, moving to New York, kind of being in small town Ireland, agricultural farmer, and then somehow now is an amazing personality in the face of Irish whiskey. We tried the cider cask rested. We tried the rum cask rested, which is recently released. We tried that in San Antonio, and lots of great things. Tullamore D.E.W just shares that barrel flavor and whatever it comes into contact with. So it was brilliant to finally sit down with him. And now, we've got St. Patrick's Day just this weekend. What better time to think about Irish whiskey like Tullamore D.E.W, like Teeling whiskey as well. And it's a great category and a fun time to enjoy it. So thanks everybody for listening to Show to V with Mike G. No matter how many seasons you have left of Parks and Rec and are really sad that it's going to end, or if you're thinking, man, Ready Player One is just about to hit theaters. Is it as good as people just said this week at South by Southwest Film Festival 2018? I don't know. But please keep tuned.